welcome to our spring city. You know, we are very lucky actually because like a week ago we had snowfall, so now it is much better. So welcome each and every one of you who is coming from even very distant places. A special warm welcome to our colleague, Mayor from Portugal. Welcome. It's great to have you here with us. And I'm sorry that our mayor actually is not present here, but they just had the local elections, you know, so they are still recovering probably from the celebration, so that's how it works, you know. So that's politics, as we know. But we are happy to be part of that project. And also what is important is that our meeting today is held in the venue which actually is a part of our study area, which is Grunwaldzka Housing District. Sorry for the Polish name, but I don't know how to call that in English otherwise. The program for today has been put together by our team, which is led by Grzegorz Sobczyk, the guy with the camera over there at the end of the room. So we are in his capable hands today. And Ileana, I guess floor is yours. So welcome to Gdansk again. I hope you are going to spend nice 2 days here. Thank you.
Thank you.
And sorry. And just for your information, because everything is being recorded and streamed live. You have all these sophisticated devices over there. So if you want to speak, you have to speak to the microphone only, okay? If you want it to be broadcasted, you have to use that device, okay? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Piotr. Thank you for this warm welcome. And thank you to the staff from Gdansk for organizing such an interesting event. Also for bringing spring in Gdansk. So we are really, really happy about it. First of all, I just would like to make a short introduction about the project. The project, so-called Archethics, has been funded by the program Urbact, the program about integrated urban development, and it has the aim to promote and to make a reflection on dissonant heritage across Europe as a laboratory for democracy. Indeed, we know that the history of Europe has generated an heritage that sometimes is controversial and complex. And this type of heritage, this is better. This type of heritage has been called dissonant. Indeed, with the term dissonant, we mean that there is a problematic link between the physical element, like architecture, neighborhoods, monuments, or urban public spaces, and the historical and political values those elements represent. Archethics is willing to open a reflection on this heritage because it's right, it's complex, it's right, it's sometimes really difficult to talk about it, but also it offers to us an opportunity to reflect on the history of democracy in Europe and also the solidarity and the people there is behind this heritage and behind this history. Yeah, so working on this particular heritage also provides a space for us to dialogue about new opportunities for society, about urban and regional development, cultural tourism, and education. For doing that, we have 9 really courageous cities that decided to join Archethics, to join this network, that are Cesena from Italy, which is the lead partner of the project. We have Permet in Albania, Leros in Greece, Kazanlak in Bulgaria, Krakow and Gdansk in Poland, Leipzig in Germany, Betera in Spain, and Villanova de Cerveira in Portugal. So different cities, different states, but representing the whole Europe. But Archethics would like to contribute to the European discussion about dissonant heritage. And we are inside the Urbact framework. So we want to offer the opportunity to find a way to manage this dissonant heritage through the Urbact methodology. And for doing that, these 9 cities are committed to develop an integrated action plan for trying to fostering a novel way to manage the dissonant heritage and also to open the reflection with citizens, with the people about the history and also the other immaterial things that this heritage represents. So we have some objectives. We want to enhance dissonant heritage as a non-divisible element for urban communities. We want to generate a better understanding for managing this type of heritage. We want to activate urban community labs. And also we want to open new perspectives and opportunities to enhance dissonant heritage as a driver for local tourism, for instance, but also for cultural development projects. We had an inspiration from Salvatore Settis, who is an Italian archaeologist, but also an art historian. And she concludes his book, Architecture and Democracy, tracing a link between architecture, citizenship, and ethics. He said, the urban landscape contributes to the full exercise of civil rights. Indeed, there is the right to city, the right to nature, and the right to culture. All of these things are connected, and our urban landscape, our architecture can represent this, environment. And also the heritage represents this environment. So, through Archethics, in the way to promote a multi-perspective approach, we decided to follow up on dissonant heritage by trying to develop 4 project dimensions that are architecture, history, people, and ethics. All of these dimensions are connected. And today we will follow up on history, on the dimension of history and the dimension of ethics. With architecture, we mean all the material heritage we have around us, like monuments, like buildings, that represent sometimes this uncomfortable memory of a complex past. But we have also history that represents the complex relationship between the public and institutional history with the individual memory or the collective memory of the people. We have the dimension of people that would like to focus on the importance to include all the people, all the young generation, the older people, women and men, girls and boys in the debate. And last but not least, we have the dimension of ethics, those heritage represents. And with ethics, we mean the recognition of this a common positive values that local community would like to address to dissonant heritage. So 9 cities, 9 heritage, 9 diversities, 9 differences between us in terms of population, in terms of history, in terms of nation belonging to, and much more. And we tried to design a line starting from the dimension of history to see in a timeline which are the heritage we want to focus on. And we can start with the Ivanova de Cervera because they brought in the project a really old heritage, a castle built in the 13th century, but then this castle representing a complex border between Spain and Portugal belonged for a period to the military, to militars, sorry. Yes, and following it became an hotel, a luxury hotel, and then abandoned. And nowadays it's still abandoned, and it's in the perfect center of the city. So it represents something that is really complex to deal with, and also really important for the population. Then we have Leros in Greece that has 100 years of dissonant heritage, starting from the Italian occupation of Porto Lago, the main village in the island of Leros, where the fascist occupation designed and built a village, the downtown of the island, and that has the feature of rationalist and fascist architecture. Then Leros has other layer of dissonance because in the highland it was opened the much bigger psychiatric hospital of Greece. They have some remains from the Second World War, and also a prison, etc. We have Cesena in Italy, and also Cesena brought to the project this heritage belonging to the fascist period again, and they have different buildings for educational purpose, for work, for after work, and also some war infrastructures. We have Betera in Spain, and it's really interesting that Betera offered to us a landscape heritage because it's possible around Betera to walk through the defensive line built during the Spanish Civil War, and also they have some some air raid shelters also in the city center. We will go then to Permet, where in 1944, so during the Second World War, the first Communist Congress has held in the Congress building. And they brought to the project this building to find a way to enhance this heritage because it represents also their national history, but they wanted to find the right way to enhance this type of heritage. We will go to Poland. We have Gdansk, and today we will have a follow-up on their heritage, so I don't want to spend so much time, but it's really interesting that we are inside one of the area selected as dissonant heritage, the Grunwald Residential District. But they also would like to focus on the Maritime Cultural Center in Novi Port, so another district of Gdansk. And in Krakow, they would like to follow up on the Nowa Huta district, which is another neighborhood built during the social realism period, a really huge neighborhood with 200,000 people that was built for the bigger steel factory in Europe. Then we have Kazanlak in Bulgaria with the Buzludzha monument, open in 1981 and closed in 1989, and it was built for the propaganda of the Bulgaria communism. And we have Leipzig in Germany with the former Matakirchhof and area with the Stasi headquarters of the East Germany. So a long timeline, differences between the heritage, but also some links and connection in the history and also the history of the cities. So this first masterclass would like to make a reflection on this complex history, trying to focus on the history of Europe, but also making a follow-up on the history of Gdansk, because Gdansk is hosting us for this first meeting, but also to open a reflection and also a link between ethics and history. So we will have some experts and speakers, and I want to thank all of them for being here with us and for sharing their knowledge with us. And I just make a short presentation of them, and then I directly give the floor. We have Dora Ivanova, from Kazanlak, representing the Buzludzha Project Foundation. She was a founder of the Buzludzha Project Foundation, but also now she's the CEO of this foundation, and she is also a member of Icomos. We will have Jacek Friedrich from the University of Gdansk, talking about the history of Gdansk, but also connected to the history of Europe. We have the Professor Piotr Lorents from the Municipality of Gdansk. We will have Iga Perzyna, thank you so much. Who is the ULG Coordinator for the Municipality of Gdansk, but also she's representing a local NGO working on urban initiatives. And we will have with us Sandra Rainero, and I want also to say a welcome to her. She is an Urbact ad hoc expert, and today and tomorrow she will help us to follow up on the dimension of gender, diversity, and inclusion linking to dissonant heritage. So now it's time to start with our speakers. Thank you so much again for being here. And I will make a small change just to make, let's say, a more comfortable discussion. And I would like to start with the Professor Jacek Friedrich, if for you will be right, will be okay. And then with Dora Ivanova. Thank you so much.
Panie Grzegorzu, może pan tutaj... Dzięki. Hello, everybody. I have half an hour, which is not a long time, as you can imagine, considering the subject of my speech. In fact, it will be not maybe about dissonant history of Europe, because half an hour is definitely not enough to talk about it, but I hope Gdansk is a town or city with such a complex and complicated history, somewhere in between Poland and Germany, Polish and German history, with many other components like Dutch or Jewish and Russian even, and so on, Scottish, English. It was a very important part of European trade world in the 16th, 17th century, one of the biggest towns in Northern Europe, very mixed and very complicated also ethnically, religiously, and so on. So I think Gdansk is probably quite a good example of our European complexity or this uncomfortable history, which is always located somewhere in between. Gdansk is, I think, just perfect example of such a history. So, in very short overview, I will tell you how the political, ethnical history of Gdansk looked like from the very beginning in the end of the 10th century, because Gdansk is a town of more than 1,000 year long history. It was established as Slavic, part of the Slavic Principate, it was ruled by Slavic dukes, connected to the state of Poland, the Kingdom of Poland, or dukes of Poland. It was changing during the early Middle Ages. And then in the beginning of the 14th century, maybe it's also important to say that even during the Slavic, or let's say so, Polish period of early Gdansk history, the citizens of the town were in very big amount the German ones, because they were treated as expert in some diverse fields of knowledge, of economics and so on. So this Polish or Slavic dukes were very happy to have those specialists from German lands, yeah, like that. So even in the very beginning, we have this complex situation with Polish, let's say, so Slavic Polish rulers or politics, with the Polish or Slavic citizens or members of the society in the lower classes, but the upper class was German even in 12th or 13th century. And in the beginning of the 14th century, the town started to be part of the Teutonic Order state. Teutonic Order was very important player in the field of the politics in this part of Europe during the Middle Ages, and Teutonic Order was German. In the name we have Teutonic Order, the German Order of St. Mary. So for another 1.5 century, Gdansk was ruled by those German Teutonic Order rulers, let's say so. And then in the middle of the 15th century, it started to be again the part of Poland for some 3.5 centuries till the end of the 18th century, when but yeah, we have to remember that even it was part of Kingdom of Poland for 3.5 century, the citizens were mostly Germans. Yeah, that's important to understand the whole complexity of the history, which is so important for understanding the history of 19th and 20th century history, when the modern nationalism started to be an important factor of our life, yeah, in Europe and then all over the world. So we have to remember that politically it was part of Poland, but ethnically it was German town mostly. And then in the end of the 18th century, the Prussian kingdom started to be the owner, the ruler in Gdansk. Gdansk, during this partition of Poland, you probably know, in the end of the 18th century, Poland disappeared from the map of Europe, and it was parted between Prussia, Austria, and Russia. And Gdansk started to be part of Kingdom of Prussia. And then during the 19th century, the Empire of Germany in the end of the 19th century. Because it was so complicated, during the Versailles Treaty after the Great War, nobody really knew what to do with Gdansk. Because, of course, Germans wanted to have Gdansk in the German state. Polish wanted to have it in Polish, new established state. And the international experts and politics decided to create so-called Free City of Gdansk, which was nor Polish, neither German. It was something in between. Some of the rule was in German hands, some in Polish. So it was really very complicated. It was compromise which wasn't really good for anybody, to be frank. And in a way, Gdansk started to be very important factor of international policy during the interwar period. And in fact, that's not coincidence that the Second World War started in Gdansk, because that was so crucial for this Polish-German relationship and so conflicted place. And then, after the collapse of Hitler regime in 1945, Gdansk started to be again part of the Polish state, with very huge German citizens, or the amount of those German citizens, inhabitants, which were all of them almost were during this after-war period, they were expelled, yeah, so thanks, expelled from Gdansk. And on the other side, very many people from the eastern territories of Poland, which were expelled from Lwów, Vilna, Podole, Volhynia, and so on. They started to be the new, of course, mixed with the rest of the Polish inhabitants. They started to be the new, completely new Gdansk citizenship, something like that, or citizen society, something. So you can see in this very short, brief history of Gdansk how complicated it was, and how always this German and Polish factors were mixed. And of course, it wasn't so important during but maybe I can show you where we are here. Okay. We can start with that. Yeah, I'll manage. Yeah, because it's part of it's not just illustration. I think it's we have to be we have to be on time. As I told you before, before 19th century, before the modern nationalism, it wasn't so important. Are you ethnically German, Polish, or anybody else? Politically, Gdansk was part of Poland, and the citizens of Gdansk were very into the Polish policy. In 16th, 17th century, they were really important factor of inner Polish policy. It's something when I'm talking with my students, which of course it's not easy to show how it worked before the modern nationalism started, because we are Germans, Polish, Italians, Spanish, and so on. So I always use the example of Switzerland. Switzerland is something quite before modern in the way, because you can be ethnically Italian, German, or French, but you are Swiss. And it was something like that. They were ethnically Germans, but they were part of this political how to call it, entity, which was the old Polish Respublika, republic. Very Polish Republic before the end of the 18th century was extremely mixed ethnically, religiously, and so on and so on. And so was Gdansk. It was Lutheran, Catholics, Calvinists, Mennonites, some other Protestant dissidents, and Jewish, and so on. So it was also very mixed. But for us, it's not maybe so important, this mixture. But what's important, the problem of this German-Polish neighborhood. That's the most important and most dissonant in the modern 19th and 20th century history of the town. And let me start with this picture. That's main painting in the main chamber of the main building in the main town, to be frank, because Gdańsk is divided in different parts, and the main, so-called główne miasto, is the most important part of the historical Gdańsk. So in the town hall, you have such a picture from the beginning of the 17th century, which maybe I can show us. We had. That's the scene where the Polish nobleman and the Gdańsk citizen are doing some business. That was, in fact, economically the basic for the history of Gdańsk. This exchange, economical exchange between the city of Gdańsk and then the rest of Europe and the Polish land, the Polish agricultural, mostly, economics. And here you have the Artushof, the building with the coat of arms of Polish kingdom on the top. So the picture really is and the Vistula River, which links Krakow, the former capital of Poland, with the Baltic Sea. So that's in a way the very good picture of a very good representation of this mixed Polish-German, Polish-Gdańsk history. What's important that on the top we have the tetragrammaton with the name of Jehovah and the white eagle, which probably, in fact, is the eagle of Jehovah, this Old Testament biblical eagle of Jehovah. But from the Polish point of view, that's the page from the book from the 30s, the Polish book from the 30s. You can see the apotheosis of Gdańsk, flowering under the protection of Polish eagle. So it was treated as a Polish eagle. It was white, like the Polish heraldic eagle, which is white. But, yeah, was it Polish? I don't think so. I think it's more into this biblical meaning. But on this very example, we can see how the history and the traces of history, the pictures, the buildings, are the matter of interpretation. And that's, for me as art historian, is the most important and the most interesting, how it was interpreted in 19th and 20th century. And I will show you in very short, in very short, quick ride, some most important, most interesting pictures from 19th and 20th century, or maybe images, not pictures, images, but it will be also architecture, not only the pictures. So let us start with this. That's the part of the German painter Schulz representation of Artushof with the very characteristic scene. You can see the Polish nobleman, very proud one. Yeah? It's like, I'm a boss. And the Gdansk citizen who is like, I'm your servant because I would like to do some business with you. You know, it's so I have to be very humble, polite, and so on. Yeah. That's the German picture. And in the same time, the Polish picture, which is about exactly the same, doing business between Polish nobleman and the German citizen, who is the proud, the German, and who is humble, the Polish. Yeah? So you can see the difference, the same situation, the same historical problem from 2 points of views. It's completely different story. Yeah? It's like we can see how this nationalist interpretation of history works in this very example. The very important part of this nationalistic, let's say so, communication in the 19th century was architecture, of course. And in Gdańsk, this red brick buildings in Prussian, so-called Prussian style, that was the tool of Germanization of the history of Gdańsk. And very interesting example is the still existing the railway station in Gdańsk, which is built in this Prussian style. But what's interesting, if you compare the Gdańsk station with the Kolmar station, by the way, designed by the same architect Riedel, you can see how similar they are. So that's the sign of Prussian Hohenzollern rule in East, and that's the sign of the same rule of Hohenzollern in West, in Alsace. Yeah? So we have Polish-German, this conflicting border, and here we have the conflicting border between Germany and France. So you can see how architecture works as a tool of Germanization, yeah? of creating policy. Very interesting example is the Technische Hochschule, our polytechnics, which was designed in the beginning of the 20th century. And that's the original project, which is different from what we now know. And what's interesting, that this original project, which is completely different in this central part, as you can see, was changed by the Emperor William II himself. So emperor, the German emperor, said it's not Gdańsk enough. It's more Netherlandish. It has to be more Gdańsk-like. And if it is, it's a completely different question. But interesting is that even in the highest level of the rule of the power, of the political power, this kind of consciousness about how the architectural forms are important was still visible. What's very interesting, the not existing, destroyed after the Second World War monument of the William I, the creator of, with Bismarck, creator of Prussian Empire, of German Empire, and what's here is the 16th century town gate with the Polish coat of arms in the center, in the very center. So you can see this mixture, this political mixture. That's the sign of the Polish rule in Gdańsk, here of the German rule in 19th century. Because it was probably a bit controversial for Germans in 19th century, all those Polish signs, especially those Polish eagles, which were everywhere in the town from the 16th, 17th century. In the end of the 19th century, the same gate, the high gate, was redesigned with the coat of arms of Hohenzollerns. Not on the front. Front is still the same as it was, but on the back side they put this something like the new sign of the Prussian, of the Hohenzollern power in Gdańsk. So here we can see this nationalistic interpretation of the history. And during the interwar period, which was probably the most interesting because that was in fact the only one period in modern history of Gdańsk where those two nationalisms were in really in conflict, in immediate conflict. Because in 19th century and then after 1945, it's more like before the First War, Germans were really 95% in Gdańsk. And after 1945, Polish were 99% in Gdańsk. And during the interwar period, even ethnically, Gdańsk was still German. Politically, it was really very, very strongly linked to Polish state. So it was very many Polish institutions and so on and so on. So during those 20 years, the conflict was probably the most visible during the whole history of the town. So you can see, and I will show you how it worked during the 20s and the 30s. So on the German side, you can see, for example, the books like that. Das Deutsche Danzig. Danzig is Deutsch. Das Deutsche Danzig again. Yeah. So and the crane, the Krantor, the so-called medieval crane, which was treated by the German side as a symbol of Germanness of the town, because it was from the Teutonic time, the German time. So they created it as a symbol of German town, yeah? German Gdańsk. On the other side, you have the Polish press, Polish books, Polish publications with Polish monuments in Gdańsk, Polish kings, Polish eagles, yeah? Which were really very, very visible. So again, the monuments of the history, the monuments of the past, as a tool of the conflict, political conflict. You can see, for example, another example of that, the cover of German book, where the brave German citizen of Gdańsk is fighting with this awful Polish eagle, yeah, which is so aggressive, as you can see. And, for example, from the same period, the Polish interpretation of the history of the town, the great, beautiful vessel with the Polish coats of arms, which is something like the symbol of Polishness of Gdańsk in the golden period, golden era. Yeah? So completely different interpretations. But not only interpretation in printed materials, but also in the real, which is probably the most interesting for us, in the real space, like the Artushof, the famous Artushof was E.T.E.A. Hoffmann famous story from the 19th century about how magic it is. And you can see here this 19th century magic, Hoffmannian-like view of the interior with, what's important, the statue of Polish king, which is here on the Polish postcard or Polish guidebook as a Polish king. But during the 30s, during the rule of the Nazis in Gdansk, they, as you can see, they removed the Polish king as probably. The funny is that he was German ethnically, because it was from the Saxon Wettin dynasty, but that doesn't matter. From the point of view of the politics, the most important was that he was Polish and not that he was Saxon. Yeah? So we can see the mechanism of this policy. They started to remove these Polish traces from not only this one, also some other, from the real space of Gdańsk, but not only Polish, of course. The synagogue, you can see, die Synagoge wird abgebrochen, yeah? And komm lieber Mai und mache von Juden uns jetzt frei. Yeah? Very, very awful anti-Semitic lines. And they really did it. So they really destroyed the synagogue in the end of the 30s. So you can see in the end of the 30s, during this Nazi period in Gdańsk history, the authorities were cleaning the town from everything which was not German, Polish, Jewish, and they created this utopian idea of pure German state. It's like Urdeutsche Danzig, something like this. Yeah, Danzig is Deutsch. Danzig is Deutsch again. The images we know also from many other German towns from this time. But in Gdańsk, the love for Hitler himself and for Nazi ideology was even bigger than in other German places, towns. Because it's always like that. In these neighboring areas, the nationalism are always stronger. That's all over Europe, yeah? And that's the case of Gdańsk. So you can see this almost religious fascination with Adolf Hitler, you can see here. And Hitler, of course, himself was very, very intelligent to use architecture as a tool of propaganda. So, for example, his famous speech in Gdańsk in September 1939 was held in Artushof, yeah? Very, with that's interesting, with the wall decorated with the leaves of oak. Yeah. Urdeutsche Eiche. Yes, that's kind of imagination. And also in the real space, you can find the buildings like that. For example, still existing the hostel for German youth, for Hitlerjugend, in fact. So that was created as something like Teutonic castle. On the top of Gdańsk, and propaganda said something like that. That's the place where German youth can see the German East. So the connection of architecture, space, and politics is so visible here, so clear. And another that was never realized, never constructed, but exists as a model, as a project, as a design, the school for Wehrmacht. Exactly in the form of Teutonic castle. So for us, we are talking about Grunwaldzka dzielnica mieszkaniowa. Maybe that's important to say. What does it mean, Grunwaldzka, in fact? Because for us in Poland, it's obvious, but for you, probably not. Grunwald was the place where in 1410, in the beginning of the 15th century, one of the biggest battles of European Middle Ages was done, and Polish troops were victorious over the Teutonic Order. So you can see for Polish in 19th and early 20th century, Grunwald was a symbol of victory over the aggressive German imperialism, something like that. So Grunwaldzka means Grunwald Street. It's refers to this medieval battle between Poland and Germany, let's say so, yeah, in the terms of modern nationalism. Everything has gone in 1945. The Germans had gone, the town almost has gone, as you can see, and it was something like the point zero. So it was possible to start to build the town as a new one, in terms of architecture, of space, but also in terms of Polishness. So you can see things like that, just Polish flags, Polish eagles on the posters, on the photographs, on the postcards. The reconstructed houses in historical center started to be decorated with completely new decoration, with, for example, Polish sailors, Polish actors, Polish noblemen doing business in Old Gdańsk, which was very popular. The Polish rafters. But not only the Polishness was important during the reconstruction of Gdańsk in the 40s and the 50s, but also the new ideology, because after this totalitarian Nazi regime, another totalitarian regime, this time Stalinist regime, started to be the most important factor of policy in this part of Europe. And you can see how it was designed to. It was never executed, never realized. But that was a plan to build the new part of Gdańsk, very Stalinist-like, in the style of socialist realism, of course, which is something like the famous Palace of Culture and Science in Warsaw, or the Moscow high buildings, and that was meant as a sign of new socialist communist era. It was, if you read the press from this period, you can find expressis verbis, things like that. That's the ideological accent of the new Gdańsk, of the new Poland, yeah, something like that. That was never done, but very many socialist realist buildings were executed, like Grunwald Street or Nowy Port, we will see, and for example the House of Press designed by Rębiszewski, who, and that's almost the end of our story, who some 10 years later designed something like that. So during the Stalinist period, it's something like the improvisation on the subject of old Gdańsk architecture, and 10 years after, completely modern in style, avant-garde, light pavilion in Sopot. Yeah? And this type of architecture in the late 50s, early 60s was very typical for not only for Gdańsk, but for the whole town, for the whole state, for the whole country. And that was the symbol of this modernization, symbol of this liberalization of communism, something like that. So for people in the 60s, they were really very proud of this kind of architecture. If you look at the postcards, for example, from the 60s, you can find the Mary Church, the Town Hall, the most important monuments of the Gdańsk history, but also the modern buildings like Krystal in Wrzeszcz or something like that. So for them it was very they were very proud of this new modern architecture, which was so European, not so Soviet, not so Bolshevik. You can understand this context of this. So even in the parts of historical Gdańsk, you can find things like that. But, and that's almost the end, after the collapse of the communism, this building changed completely. It looks like that. So you can see it's something like old Gdańsk architecture, yeah, with the red brick, with the gables, and so on. So you can see how dissonant the communist heritage was in Gdańsk during this 90s and early 21st century. And to be in this part of Gdańsk, in Wrzeszcz, I can show you another example of that. That's the quite regular block from the 60s, hundreds of them in Gdańsk, but the decoration is interesting. That's the original one from the 16th, abstract, modern one. In Polish we call it Picasso, which means Picasso-like decoration. And after the collapse of communism, neighboring house from the same series of blocks started to be decorated with the, it's not very well visible, but you can see that's the crane on the Motława River, that's the old Gdańsk, historical Gdańsk. So you can see how it's changed, yeah? How architecture, visual representations, how they were treated as a tool of this change of political manipulations in a way. Yeah. So, if I have 2 more minutes more, I have something like an epilogue. Yeah, yeah, great. So I will show you one of the symbols of our town, which is the Neptunbrunnen, is like a fountain of Neptune, Fontanna Neptuna in Polish. That's really very beautiful monument from the beginning of the 17th century, and as I told you, it's the symbol of the town. And I will show you some pictures of it from the 20th century and early 21st century. The first one is from the book published before the First War, before the Great War, and it's quite neutral. You can see the monument as it is, yeah, with the statue of the King of the Seas, but also with not maybe very clearly visible, but quite visible Polish eagle. Yeah, so it's something like neutral representation of the monument. In Polish publications from this interwar period, you can see something different. The Polish eagle is quite more important. It's more visible. It's like on the photographs, on the lithographs, in the books. There is something like, you can see this eagle, and here we have the Polish eagle, the Polish white eagle is shining in the dark of the night, which is metaphor, not only night physically, but also the night of German Nazi regime, something like that, yeah? But on the other side, in the same moment, in the 20s and the 30s, on the German side, of course, they used Neptunbrunnen as a symbol of the town, but always without Polish eagle. Like in this Gulden banknote, post stamps, or even in photographs in the books. And this one is extremely interesting because you cannot see the Polish eagle, but if you look more precisely at the photograph, you can see that that was retouched. So it was physically still on the place, but on the photograph is so, this Polish eagle, it's so uncomfortable. So it was to be removed, yeah. And then in the end of in the 30s, they removed it physically. The Hitlerjugend troop removed this Polish eagle from this gate. Of course, it's not. Nothing special that after 1945 this Polish interpretation of the monument started to be again important. So we can see this beautiful photograph with the Polish eagle shining in the dark. Not in the darkness, of course. And 3 postcards from the 50s and. So, the one with quite visible Polish eagle, the second one with even more visible Polish eagle, and the third one where the Polish eagle is the most important, and the Neptune is just, something quite small. But, and that's the 2 last images, after the collapse of communism, when Neptune was started again to be treated as a symbol of the town, you can find it, for example, in the design of the post stamp without Polish eagle, as you can see. And when the Euro was organized here in Gdańsk, the Neptune himself started to be a symbol of our town, but again, without Polish eagle. So you can see on those small, visible this monuments of visibility, let's say so, you can see how it changed and how the heritage, artistic heritage, architectural heritage could be the weapon, the tool of politics, of conflict. So thank you. 5 minutes. I hope you will. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much to the professor that I haven't presented very well, because as you have discovered through his presentation, he's an art historian, he's a museologist. He wrote several books for adults, but also for children, sharing this interesting history. And now I have the pleasure to give the floor to Dora Ivanova. She was the founder of the Buzludzha Foundation, but also she is one of the member of the board and the CEO of the foundation. Dora is an architect, and she's developing really interesting things for the Buzludzha Foundation, and now we will discover some of them. I don't want to anticipate so much.
Thank you, Ileana. Thank you first for the invitation, and I'm very happy to see you all here for this partnership, and I'm happy also to be here with our most valuable partners from the Municipality of Gdansk. As said, I'm from the Buzludzha Project Foundation, and we work together to find a new future for this amazing building. And this is, yes, one of these political expressions of power from the most recent past. And one of these monuments of visibility, as you said, for Bulgaria. So this monument is located on the top of a mountain peak in Bulgaria, exactly in the middle of the state. The altitude is 1,500 meters, and it's not just coincidence to put a monument on a mountain peak. So this is an important historical place for Bulgaria. First, it was a place of an important fight against the Ottomans. The rebel Haji Dimitar and his troops were fighting there. And then later, because of that, there were commemorations. Everybody was honoring this place. And at one of these commemorations, the Bulgarian, the first Bulgarian Communist Party, or actually it became the Communist Party later, was founded there. It was the Social Democratic Workers' Party. Later, there were partisans there which were having fight against the Bulgarian Nazi army at this moment. And so that's why there were these 3 generations. And obviously the party later in the 50s decided that this is a great opportunity to link themselves and their achievements to the older Bulgarian history and the liberation fights. So it was a perfect place for propaganda purposes to say, okay, our grandfathers, fathers, and sons were fighting all for freedom, and we connect each other and look for the bright future. So this was generally the message that they wanted to give there, and of course to create something quite different and quite attracting attention for this period architecturally. So this monument was built for 8 years. It was extremely difficult. There were 6,000 people taking part in the construction work. And it was built with donations, obligatory donations, and it was at this moment. And it was opened in 1981. And it was used actually as said as a place for propaganda, and they were inside. This was the main hall, so people will come there every round hour to see the glory of the Bulgarian Communist Party. It's actually the full name. We call it today Buzludzha Monument, but its full name is Monumental House of the Bulgarian Communist Party at Buzludzha Peak. And we have about 1,000 square meters of mosaics showing different episodes of the society, of different fights of the Communist Party. And there was a light and sound show inside, which was quite impressive. There was technology from there were Mac computers, and there were technology from Japan to Austria to the States that were all connected to create a unique experience for the visitors, and it was successful for their propaganda purposes that they wanted to do at this moment. But then later, after the end of the communist regime in 1989, the monument was, shortly after that, it was abandoned. And as you can see, so it was built for 8 years and it was used for 8 years. In the last 30 years, it's just 35 already, it's just abandoned. And the main motto is summarized in this graffiti, forget your past. And in this whole time, so at the beginning, it was growing and living a new phase of this building. At the beginning, it was just abandoned. There were musicians, there were people creating videos, arts installations, even some fashion shows, some music clips. And it started to be very attractive for photographers all around the world. And from the communist symbol, it became the symbol of Urbex tourism. And it went to all around the internet as one of the most beautiful abandoned places in the world, which gave it its fame in the internet. And this fame is actually what gives it the possibility for further reinterpretation. And these layers of history are really represented in one building in quite a unique way. And actually, such pictures that were circulating the internet, something like this, I had the possibility also to see. And then, so it became, this was 10 years ago, it became my master thesis. This is the Technical University of Berlin in 2014. And this is how it all started for me. So I was quite impressed by the pictures, and I said, okay, I have to try to do something for this quite amazing piece of architecture. So yeah, I dedicated my master thesis, and then I founded the Buzludzha Project Foundation in 2015. And at the beginning, so the first 5 years of this foundation, it was more or less one-man show, where I was trying to find ways, of course many people were helping me, but I was trying to find way how to go forward, because how do you save a communist monument on the top of the mountain peak, and what do you do with it? It's a question that doesn't have an easy answer. But then the second 5 years, which is since 2019, this initiative grew into something I think very beautiful, because they're experts, they're volunteers, they're institutions, they're supporters all across Europe. We are very happy to work, yes, with the Municipality of Kazanlak, with the region, with the Ministry of Culture and Tourism. And actually it all started with a nomination in 2018 for one of the 7 most endangered heritage sites, which was an initiative by Europa Nostra and the European Investment Bank. So it became one of the 7 most endangered. And then after this, in 2019, we started with the first funding from the Getty Foundation. That's a foundation in LA, which supported us to do a conservation management plan. So we started researching, and this was a great chance to start with a very deep research. What is this building? What is the structure? How did it function? And how we can preserve it or reuse it in the future? And probably the most important conclusion that I can summarize, besides, of course, it's technically sound that it can be reused, which is very important, but the other thing is we were all, the entire team, were all on the same opinion that we need to preserve all the layers. So we don't want to restore it. So we think it is wrong to restore this building as it was at its former glory, because we will erase, again, part of the past and part of the dissonance. So we want to embrace the dissonance and to talk about the dissonance, to communicate it. And we believe this is part of the value and part of the meaning why we need places like this. And then, analyzing the building, we realized that that's a big task. So, and obviously you need millions to solve it. And we don't have them, but we don't have the time either. So what do we do? And so we were thinking in a circle, okay, we need these millions to do the roof, to protect it, to go forward, to develop the project. We don't have them. What do we do? And in this moment, I think the restorers absolutely valuable experts who showed us the way that we can do it piece by piece and tessera by tessera, those small mosaic pieces. And that's how we started. And I think I'm so grateful for their advices and their support, because you have to start. I mean, I really like this expression, how do you eat an elephant? You eat it bite by bite. So this is our elephant. We start small with the smallest interventions we can do. And this is rolling the snowball to make it bigger. And I think this is very, very important. And I believe the process is very important, so that you get people on board, you get the citizens on board, you get the institutions on board. And this creates, even before the project is already there, it creates the acceptance and the understanding. And of course, we are still in the middle, or I don't know where, but there's still a lot to be done. But here we started actually the first works on site. So here is how we found the building. And we realized that the mosaics are very endangered, and they will be just falling apart and destroying very soon if we don't do something. And we started with restorers from several institutions and nationalities. We collected expertise, because it's, again, quite a big task, the 1,000 square meters of mosaics falling apart. We have very little budget. But we started implementing emergency measures. And we were creating shelters over the mosaics, and we were working to stop the decay. So again, most of the people think that we restore the mosaics. We don't restore the mosaics. We don't want to restore the mosaics. We want to preserve them as they are, because we think that they tell this story, and even the missing parts, even the graffiti, they tell additional layers of the story. But we need them there to be able to tell the story, because once they're completely gone, then there is nothing to tell, right? So then we continued with different initiatives. For example, we had the initiative Adopt a Mosaic, so this is another tip I have for you. So quite for some time, I was going out there and saying, please support our initiative to save the mosaics. Zero result. But if you go out and say, we need you to give us 3,000 euro to save this specific mosaic from decay. We'll create this specific shelter. It will save it in this specific way. And if you do that, we'll save this mosaic artwork, which represents that and that. That's a completely different story. So if you are very specific what you need and go to the people and whoever to ask for a very specific request, I was quite impressed that this worked almost every time. So that's something I learned also on the way. So in this process, we were able to collect the funding to be able to finish the work on the wall mosaics, but we have mosaics on the ceiling as well. So we had to create additional structures, and we were happy at this moment to be supported also by the Ministry of Culture, which already listed the monument as a monument site from national significance, which was another very important step to recognize it as heritage at all. So we were able to work on that, and we were able also to create our next big task was, okay, the mosaics are now saved. We can breathe. We have a little bit of time, and now to go to the next big task, which is the roof. But meanwhile, we are keeping the strategy to allow the people to learn and to understand, to accept, to criticize, to give feedback. So our next project was to give access to the people, because there we have, in the summer months, in the weekends, we have more than 1,000 people every weekend which want to go inside but can't. So we wanted to give access to them and created this pathway so it is secure and you can visit the inside. And for that, we also cleaned the roof to make it a secure place. I have to say here, so it's very good to have good plans, good intentions, and to follow best practices, but it's also very good to have stable political system, which we don't have in Bulgaria right now. So we have many elections and many changes in positions, and this so far didn't allow to go to the step to really open the monument. But we do believe that this is the right next move, and yeah, we hope that we will find the way and the sufficient support to make it happen soon. So these are the intermediate step to open it to public as it is, but the future, what we can imagine at this place, is to be a place for cultural events. In the main hall, there can be different types of cultural event or historical discussions for about 500 people. We can imagine different contemporary art exhibitions and installations in many different ways to interpret in different ways the difficult past. And we would like to invite the people to go to the top of the pylon and to see the amazing overview of Bulgaria from there. And to pave the path towards this future, we are organizing different events, consolidating again the different and multi-perspective views of Buzludzha, but into one direction of need for preservation. So we are organizing a forum for cultural heritage, where we discuss actually what we learned with other cases nationally and internationally. So our next forum is in December, the 3rd and the 4th, in Sofia, where I want to welcome you. So it will be great if we can connect on that as well. And we organize a festival, because we were thinking, okay, it is great to have this scientific discussions and to be clear on the philosophical, ethical, expert point of view, but it's also important to go out to the public and involve the broader society into a heritage topic, because heritage, it is very important for us people into heritage, but it is great to involve also the normal citizens. So we created this festival, and we had 3 editions so far. We are planning the next one this summer from the 8th to the 11th of August. And we are having musical stages. We're having volunteer that you can see here on this picture. We're having, yes, 3 stages, 1 in front of the monument, 1 in the forest, 1 on one meadow in the night. And we are having a 3D mapping show on the facade. So this is a real picture. It's not a 3D something of the monument, where we give it a new face in some way, which is again the same building, but just reimagining it, rethinking it, and just provoking the public to see it with different eyes. Yes, you can see here some pictures from the musical stages, and in the day we're having different workshops. For example, we show how you can do your own mosaics, how you can restore a mosaic if you want. We have lectures, there are different sport events, and so on. And yes, and with that, actually we, in a fun and educating way, we are going out to talk and to discuss this. And we have, so last time we had about 2,000 people at this festival, but on the social media we reach millions. So it is impressive that dissonance can attract a lot. I think this is one of its weapons, that whenever we have something dissonant, people are automatically interested. So they're against it, they are for it, they don't know, they want to tear it down, they want to restore it as it was, but they want to know. So this is really helping to reach out and to talk about it. And you can see, so one of the months on our social media, we reach more than 1 million people. So there are articles and interviews for Discovery Channel, National Geographic, and so many more. And I think this is very, very helpful. And I think it's very helpful to keep the entire process transparent. So whenever you want to solve a dissonant heritage problem, like undercover, it only raises questions and thoughts of something's wrong. So I think it's very important that all the steps are very transparent, very public, and people can see, participate, ask questions, and so on. And then now it's the last slide. So we are now starting a project which is about the communication of dissonant heritage, because I think this is the key. And it's called Developing an Inclusive Process for Communicating Dissonant Heritage. And we have wonderful partners from the University of Bologna, the EUROM, which is part of the University of Barcelona, Atrium, Euroclio, and the Urban Agenda Dissonant Heritage Action Group. And this is an EU-funded project which starts right now and which will be developed in the next 2 years. And the whole topic is how to create a methodology to communicate dissonant heritage and how to involve the people into that. Because I think, so the recent past is not something that, especially me, I'm born exactly after the end of the socialist regime, so I don't feel in the role to tell people what was socialist regime like. I feel myself in the role to ask people what was it like. So it is much more about story asking than storytelling, and so we will do oral history campaigns, interviews, focus groups, and we will allow this multifaceted, multicolored views. And we want to create a digital platform, which is a digital twin for Buzludzha, and an exposition, the first exposition there. And with that, I want to invite you actually to our next event, which is the Communicating Dissonance Heritage Agora on the 28th of May. And by the way, really, all of you are welcome to present your cases there. I think we can do this even as a collaboration. And this will be a big online event, so everybody can be from their cities and to talk about communicating dissonance. And thank you very much. Online. It's an online event, fully online. Yes, you can learn more about it on Buzludzha project, Facebook, Instagram, and contact us. And I'm here for questions as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dora. We decided to invite Dora here because Dora is also an inspiration for all of us, because we can see through the Dora history that heritage can be a change maker thing. So she's a change maker for the Buzludzha, but also for Kazanlak. And I think that the young people, architects, but also other type of expertise can be involved and engaged through the heritage, especially when this heritage is dissonant. Thank you so much. And now we will give the floor to Piotr Lorents, who is a professor at the Faculty of Architecture, but he is also working at the Municipality of Gdansk. Yes, he's an expert on urban planning and architecture, and now he will share an overview of the architecture of Gdansk.
So, good morning, everybody. We are also happy to have our colleague from the Urbact program, Aldo. He is with us. He is from Poland, from Krakow, as far as I remember. So Aldo is with us. Aldo is our colleague dealing with the urban program in Poland. So, as I was already introduced, my name is Piotr Lorents, and I'm the city architect here in Gdansk. But also today I will have a pleasure to discuss a little bit of the dissonant heritage in case of Poland. And today I would like to kind of supplement that what our dear colleague Jacek Friedrich mentioned. He was actually speaking more about a kind of ideological fight. I'll try to translate this into urban planning and architectural design. So we didn't discuss that before, but I guess we kind of complement each other quite well. I'm sorry for a little delay with the presentation, but I have prepared something special for you, and it has to be uploaded, okay? So it will take a minute and so on. So our colleague Grzegorz is working on that. So let me just give you a few minutes. 19:20. Może być, okej. Troszeczkę wcześniej, tak? 19:24. 24 w lewo. Okay, perfect. Okay, maybe we can, I don't know if you can see that. All right, so this is an excerpt from the famous Polish movie called The Man of Marble. This is the movie about the Stalinistic times, about the issues associated with the constructing actually the social realism in Poland. It's actually the story about people who were working at the time, and also their tragic fates, and also very complicated Polish history from that time. But what is important about that is that actually it shows the way actually the social realism in Poland has been constructed. Also, it shows to some extent fake, but also to some extent true enthusiasm of the Polish people to rebuild the country after the disaster of World War II. And of course, it shows the friendship between Poland and between the Soviet Union. Okay? It also shows a kind of surprising conditions from the contemporary perspectives, how the whole thing actually has been constructed and executed. And this is an excerpt partly from the original footage from the period. I guess in every case, in Bulgaria, you also had this kind of propaganda movies shot at that time. I guess in the fascist regimes, we also had similar things. But what is important in that it actually shows a kind of complete approach to shaping the new culture, the new people, the new civilization, even to some extent. I think this is super important to actually do that. And then, 24:42, jeśli można. Sorry, another part of that. Okay, perfect. And here you can see also some very important part of the heritage from that time. We just heard about the Kazanlak with all these mosaics and so on. Well, we had a lot of the also other pieces of art structured at that time, which now are long forgotten, only pictured in some art history books and so on. But also, what is important is that actually the scale of the building effort at that time was absolutely enormous. Okay, here we can see an example of Warsaw, so-called Marszałkowska housing district. Here in Gdansk we have Grunwaldzka housing district. We also had the major development of Nowa Huta, and you can see those happy people dancing and marching and doing all this kind of the stuff. So I just wanted to add that little flavor to our presentation, just actually to put you in the setting of the propaganda setting of these times, which I think is absolutely important. Okay, and now, okay, perfect, thank you so much. And now, the real story and coming to Gdansk. We just talked about the social realism, which is a little piece of the dissonant heritage that we are dealing with. And actually, in case of Gdansk, we have at least 4 or 5 layers of the dissonant heritage overlapping in the same area, basically speaking. We have prepared a gift for you. Some of you whom we have met in Cesena, you have already got the book about the Gdansk West Front and about the history and development of the site. For those of you who didn't get it then, you know, we have more of them for you, so we will be happy to share them with you. So actually, on that example of this Gdansk West Front, I would like today to speak a little bit about those multiple layers of the dissonant heritage. And this is the site which actually is associated with the area of the former fortifications. The site which has been converted into the new representative major part of the city. You had the same thing in Leipzig, right? I mean, at the turn of the 19th and 20th century, or a bit earlier, and we had that in many other European cities. So actually, we can see from the documentary how actually the whole thing used to look like before any kind of the transformation has been started. And of course, we can use the example of Vienna just actually to see what was a kind of idealistic version of the whole thing. So in case of Gdansk, the points of departure was just ramparts, fortifications, and a kind of no-go area, like this kind of the site. And then all the city gates have been actually just part of that story. Jacek was mentioning this gate in his presentation. But then the transformation plan arrived. It's one of the versions of those things, which later on was translated into the more detailed plan. And actually this wonderful Wilhelminian architecture from the turn of the 19th and 20th century, which many people still love and adore. And this is a very interesting thing, actually has been created. As Jacek mentioned also, the whole thing was gone during World War II, because thanks to the Red Army and the siege of Gdansk in March of 1945. But what is important is that this area has been actually forming a kind of the new major representative part of the city, okay? It was not the long market again where we go now as tourists, where we go to enjoy the city, actually. This was the place to be proud of, okay? So this was like shaping the area which potentially could serve as a major public space of the newly reborn, so to speak, city. And this actually has been translated into the complete structure. Here you can see the interwar plan showing how the whole thing used to look like. In the book, which is in the back, actually you can find it. And also what is interesting, that already then we started a very interesting discussion in the city about how actually the architecture of the city should be shaped. More than 100 years ago, there were like real fights between the modernists and the traditionalists and the rest of the architectural and planning community, how to shape the particular parts of the city. Here is an excerpt from one of the very important brochures published in the 1920s or 30s by a German professor of our technical university, Otto Klepper. But what is interesting is that this one layer of the heritage has been, the Wilhelminian German heritage, has been questioned by the Nazis, okay? By the Nazis who arrived in early 30s, 1930s. Actually, Jacek mentioned that in Gdansk we had this kind of almost religious approach to Hitler and Nazis and so on. Well, that's what we got. But what is important is that we were, the local architects and planners were also very active in shaping the new plans for transforming the city into the truly Nazi city, okay? So this is one of the examples of that, what actually was in store for the area. And also there were many more plans for transforming the whole thing. It's a story in itself, so you can find a little bit here in this yellow book, which some of you already have, and the other ones are gonna get today. But also what is interesting is that many of those buildings are still existing today. Jacek just mentioned this former youth hostel, which is still there. And here is another example, just on the other side of the street, which actually has been built as some German administration institution. I don't remember exactly what that was. Now it's the governor's office of the Gdansk province, okay? So this is actually still there. And surprise, surprise, after World War II, before the social realism arrived, we had a kind of first set of ideas regarding rebuilding the city. The first set of ideas which were recalling the pre-war Polish modernism, kind of high modernism as we call it, which has been developing mostly in Warsaw and in Katowice, maybe also a little bit in Kraków and Poznań, which were the major Polish cities at that time before World War II. And actually, some of the architects coming from those areas came to Gdansk after World War II, and they started to conceptualize the new future for the city, using their pre-war ideas, the pre-war ideas of the monumental, modernist, also nationalist, we should say, architecture. So here we have got some ideas and concepts which have been only partly realized. Here you can see on the right side, this is the existing part of the city hall of Gdansk. The rest has never been constructed. It has never been built. And then these late modern approaches has been questioned by the communists, and the social realism buildings have arrived. And here is that what Jacek was mentioning in his presentation, with this monumental copy of the Palace of Culture from Warsaw, or one of the Seven Sisters which have been built in Moscow. It's basically the same kind of the approach for building a kind of the new monumental crown of the city, as we should say it. And here you can see that on the model, and also on the plan when actually these projects have been conceptualized. But there was many more of these projects, okay? Actually, the Stalinist architecture of the city and the Stalinist approaches to the urban planning in Gdansk is still to a large extent untold story. Actually, within this project, we are just starting to explore how the whole thing used to look like. And our colleagues are all the time digging in the archives and finding out some very interesting concepts for particular buildings, unrealized, undeveloped structures, and so on. So there is much more to be told. Although we know the basics, what was actually built, because we can see it. There is even some PhD study dealing with that. But actually, there is no comprehensive discussion of that, what actually was the scale of the plans for the transformation of the city, and there is still a lot to be told. But what was interesting is that actually some of these approaches were very radical, including not building anything, just planting trees and greenery, okay? Which probably now, from the climate change perspective, would be something which we would probably enjoy. Well, this is actually what has been done. So this was actually the third layer of the heritage, okay? And we are dealing with this third layer of the heritage, with the social realism. But this was not the end. Then we had 60s and 70s, with another approach to the late modern planning approach, with extensive planning for the transportation network, for new roads. Here you can see on this study how many of the new highways were supposed to be built in the city. Of course, they never did, but actually some of these things actually look pretty scary regarding the scale of the development. And actually some of them were, like this area in front of the Gdansk main train station. Again, same thing in Leipzig. You have exactly the same thing around the old town, right? So that's how that works. And actually also on the model, which was constructed in the late 60s, early 70s, you can see the approaches to the transformation of the city, which actually have been discussed after this. Again, the modern approach has been reinstated in Gdansk after the social realism period. And the highlight of that is actually this famous building, which is called the Green Building, as we can call it. It was actually originally constructed as the construction office for the shipbuilding industry. So actually my father was working in here, so this was kind of, I have some kind of personal stories associated with this particular site. But what is important about that is actually this was not only the symbol of the modernization and westernization of the country, but also to some extent of the Americanization of the country. As you can see, the building, well, it's a kind of vague copy of the Pan Am building in New York City, okay? So, I mean, it is surprising, but actually if you look at the architecture and the shape, it's more or less I mean, the relation is clear, okay? So Jacek was showing those relations between the train station in Gdansk and the train station in somewhere in Colmar, okay? So here we have got the building in Gdansk and the very similar building which was constructed in New York City at that time, okay? By the way, very complicated structure and many issues with redeveloping that at the moment, but it is place for another story. So this is another layer. And now, what is interesting, we have got the post-transformation approach towards shaping the city, including building this kind of shopping structures. I don't want to discuss the architecture of that because it would take forever and probably the mayor would fire me after that. So I'm not going to do this. Sorry, I still want to keep my job, okay? But what is important about this is that this was as a kind of postmodern response to all these totalitarian concepts. What is interesting, it is also contested. Okay? We are also discussing how to do this better. Okay? We are also discussing now to what extent maybe we could make it more glorious, actually, more interesting, more human, and so on. So there is a huge discussion right now in the city regarding what to do with this particular site, how to make it more urban looking like, and also how to actually transform it into something which people will be more proud of. So there is ongoing discussion regarding that, and what is interesting in this discussion, we are also coming back to those social realist approaches to architecture. And here is where our project comes. As when we started to look at our project site at this Grunwaldzka housing district, we have immediately discovered that this is actually a wonderful template of the 15-minute city. Actually, a 15-minute city is a contemporary concept, not the social realism concept, okay? It's walkable, it is permeable, okay? You can actually use it as a kind of multi-use kind of structures. There is a lot of public spaces, there was a lot of greenery, there was a lot of social infrastructure. What else do you need for life, okay? And it also looks very urban, okay? If you look around over there, you can see this is the most urban looking like part of the contemporary urban structures in Gdansk, okay? So we are rediscovering to some extent the values of this particular area, not the ideology, but the urban planning and architectural values of that. Especially that in case of Gdansk, we do not have all these men of marble standing over there, so there is no ideology visible over there. It's just a kind of architecture and urban planning which seems to be worth revisiting. So thank you so much. I hope I didn't go over time, and I hope you enjoyed a little bit of the movie footage from the very beginning. Thank you.
Thank you so much to the professor, Piotr Lorents. It was really interesting. Also, I have the opportunity to see the videos, the movies, and later on I would like to write the title because I really want to, looking forward to this. And now I have the pleasure to give the floor to Iga Perzyna, sorry, apologize. And she will share some examples of civic engagement here in Gdansk. So we will follow up again about what is working in Gdansk and some opportunities of civic engagement. Iga has a background as an architect. She's working with an association, a local association, about city initiatives, but also she's working in the international cooperation, working in Africa and also in other countries, I guess. And now I will give the floor to Iga to knowing more about her.
All right, I think this is just full, let me see, full screen mode. Okay, thank you. Sorry?
Microphone?
Oh, yes, my God, microphone. Right, I guess you can't really skip that one. Okay, hello. Thank you, Ileana, for the introduction. Just a small correction. I'm not an architect. I'm an architectural historian who, through various paths, has ventured into something which is essentially urban planning and urban design. And today what I will do is to present you a few projects by City Initiative Association. And I'm here together with my two colleagues, Piotr and Mateusz. Inicjatywa Miasto, we are a small NGO that essentially what we do is that we work with transforming urban spaces. We were founded in 2013, and since then we have worked on over 30 projects. They have different scales and different scopes. And we also work with different entities, actually. So we work both with private and public institutions, organizations, donors, founders, you name it. what I want to start with before I go into a bit more detail on our projects, and I will give you a very, very quick overview of our key projects related to community engagement, is how we work. And I think there are like really three things that describe like our way or our approach. The first one would be communication. So we believe that every process needs to be founded on a honest, transparent, as you said, communication. The other one is really negotiation, and this is something that we have found that, you know, each project or process involves a lot of stakeholders, and negotiation is, in a way, like a key thing in those processes where you have different opinions and different needs and you name it, that you need to kind of come into find a compromise. And the third thing is, which I think is quite important from our perspective, and that's the fact that the way we work is that although we work with urban planning, we always think in two terms, which is we look at a space and we work with a social program for that space, but also an urban and architecture one. So this human element is really key to our work. Miejsce tworzą ludzie, so this is just to say this is our motto, or has been since the foundation, and this means people create places or spaces, right? And in a way, this is really, you know, this red line through all our activities. And I think this really comes sort of quite nicely with the fact that we have been working a lot with placemaking, and I think you might be familiar with the concept. It's not an unknown one, but this is also one of the ways that we really approach each of our projects and look at the urban spaces, basically. And here, I'm using an image that is a favorite one of Piotrek, because I think what it really says is that we have been animating a space, and we decided to create this, I don't know how to call it, like this little structure that we put in the middle of the space, and then we kind of, you know, give the people opportunity to actually use it and adapt it for their own needs. And I feel like each process that we really conduct is a bit like this. You know, we give a wireframe, and then we let people fill it in with their kind of content. So I'm going to just show three types of projects that we have done that engage like community. The first one is urban regeneration, and I just want to point some of the kind of key ways in which we work in each of those projects. So the first one, this is Park Świętopełka. So this was, I believe, the first project of boys, because I wasn't a part of the team back then. The generated park in the center of Gdansk. And I think this is probably one of the first kind of really participatory urban redevelopment processes that took place in Gdansk at that time. And here, what is kind of like important, that of course, apart from regenerating the entire space and making it look better, we also created, you know, a cultural and social program. And this was developed together with the community. And I think this really made it so successful that the park until this day is really in use. So kind of like, you know, through the entire process that we did, and it took 2 years, we were able to build up this ownership and this feeling of comfort and anything. Basically, the place is alive. It's not only looking good, but it's also living. The other project, which is also related to urban regeneration, and this is really our flagship project. So we work a lot with urban markets, and this was our pilot project, which we did here in Gdańsk. Again, very degenerated, that's not the right word, but anyway, dilapidated urban market. When you have urban markets, of course, you have different stakeholders again, vendors, the manager of the space, and really this big question between like how do you create a space which is economically viable, but then also kind of, you know, for the people. So this was really the challenge that we faced here. I will not really be going too much into detail because it was a very complex project for us. But essentially, in each kind of step of the project, we involved, again, the different stakeholders. And we also worked a lot with sociologists and different people from different kind of fields in order to try to kind of create a complex strategy for the regeneration of the space. But what is here maybe more interesting or important is the fact that we also, through our work a lot with prototyping. And this is, for us, we have found a very good and efficient way of really involving people in designing or testing different solutions for a given challenge. And this is just to show you, one of the very small things that we did during this project was really to organize the space. And this really only meant to setting up people in one line. And then together with the vendors, we were testing and seeing, do you like it? Is it okay? Should we change something else? And so on and so forth. And this, I think it took us like 6 months to keep it and to get people to, really get used to the new kind of way of using the space. And that was the foundation for then when we went in and did permanent changes. We actually knew that what we proposed would be used and would also be useful for the people. That's really kind of how we work. And we use prototyping in all of our projects really if we can and if it's needed. Participatory design, this is another kind of field in which we work. Here, these are not great pictures. I mean, in terms of, it's probably the, anyway. So just to show you, so we have also done a lot of smaller participatory design projects. And these are, I think, very different type of projects to the one related to urban regeneration. So bigger ones where there are more stakeholders and where the question of ownership is maybe not as clear as it is in the smaller projects that we have worked on, where we go into the backyard or a little square or a little pocket place. And then we work with a very specific group of people through usually not that long processes. They are maybe shorter ones, but they are the ones that take you, from the design, discussion, design to implementation. So you kind of get the full cycle of the project and you do it together with the people. So this is what we have done a lot in 2016 to 2018. And also, sorry? Yes, and we do actually, yes, so thank you for pointing that out, because this and also this project, which is the revitalization of, I don't know if I can call it backyards, of inner courtyards of apartment buildings. So this is also, it's actually like a city-led program that we have been a part of, where indeed we do work with low-income communities, and those programs are really a part of what used to be called revitalization programs in Gdańsk. I don't know if we still use the word revitalization or if we maybe use the word regeneration now, but nonetheless, the approach is exactly the same. So you kind of, for a long time, work with the community, establish a certain type of relationship, and then take the people through the full cycle, and that sometimes successfully, sometimes unsuccessfully, allows us to build, the feeling of ownership, really, which is quite key in this type of contexts. Maybe if you would have more time, we could show you, but it's an interesting and very challenging context to work in, and also, really get people to take care of what they do. It's also a bit of a discussion, but I think we all have experience with that. So community consultations, this is the final type of project that I will just discuss. And I'm not sure if we are actually allowed to use the word community consultation because they are legally sanctioned in Poland. So what we do isn't necessarily community consultations in the legal terms. So we call it a participatory process. And here I just very briefly want to discuss a bit of this thing that happened and started in 2021 and was initiated by the city architect office. And it's called Gdansk Design Workshops, I think this is the easiest way of translating that. And what the city architect here in person and his team started back then was really a series of community consultations regarding different subjects related to urban development, which was non-existent until 2021 in Gdańsk. And now we are like 3 years onwards. This is the first project that we had, which is Young City, which is where the shipyard is in Gdańsk. So it's high profile, location, contested, probably to many degrees, with a lot of stakeholders. And this is really what marked the kickoff of the whole series of meetings, and I don't know how many they have been so far, but it's a really very regular thing that is happening now in Gdańsk. Just a little bit about like how we worked. This is just in a second. So I think, you know, when you work with urban development, maps, stickers, this is really the key tool that you have. But we also kind of realized, and usually those processes take more than a month. It's like 2, 3, 4, 5 months. So what we do is also that we have kind of throughout the time developed a way of working with people. So we kind of combine both like open, big meetings, then we have workshop meetings, then we also have walks around the kind of area of concern. Just to kind of find different ways of engaging people, but also reaching out to different stakeholders, right? Because not everything suits everyone. And this is just to show you that like one of those things that we also did, and I see we will also have a role play later, so it's not like it's a rocket science or we have invented the wheel, but we actually did kind of invent our own game for those different consultations that we do, which is a bit based on Dixit and role play. And this is really to just, you know, when we often talk about the future of a certain place, right? And once you discuss the future of a certain place, people usually tend to get really wild. And we kind of want them to, once they come with certain ideas and decisions and wishes, to think like, okay, but why? And argue for why do you actually want this? And is this feasible, viable? And so on and so forth. So this is what we do usually with those cards, that we say, okay, who are you? Why do you do it? And for whom, for instance? So just to show you one way of working. So this is, Stocznia w Dialogu, same space, but this is actually a private developer, very contested space, I would say. These were consultations that followed directly the consultations we did for the city. Again, working with very similar tools, and with similar people, as it turns out. And then, I'm almost coming to the end, no worries. This is just to show you like a very recent process which we did, which was a large process led by the city. And I think it took over 2 years for the entire process. We came in at the end to consult like some final elements of this plan. And here you can also see that the city decided to introduce a new element into the consultations, which was a model. And this is a large, full-scale, like a huge model, which also kind of, was a very interesting element to use in engaging people. This is nearly the last slide now. And this is just to say that while we started to do all those community consultations, what we also did simultaneously is that we started to create reports. And I think some of you might have access to those reports that summarize like the outcomes of those workshops that we do. And this is, I think it's a normal thing to do, yet so rarely does people see the outcomes of certain processes. And I think what we, and the city above all, have managed to do over the 3-4 years is to create like a bit of a brand and, a type of report that now people, the citizens of Gdańsk, know where all the information is. And then we, I think, found like a good way of translating sometimes difficult information into very simple terms and using a very approachable language. So we did manage to kind of create this way of communicating with people. And this is that. I think a lot more to say, of course, but we have 2 days to discuss. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Iga, for this overview on some participatory processes around Gdansk. Really, really interesting. And now I am really happy to introduce for this masterclass, but to introduce for Archethic Network, our ad hoc expert from the Urbact program, who will follow us. She will support us for fostering the gender and also the diversity of approach as one of our cross-cutting issues to be developed in your integrated action plan. But for now, for the masterclass, she will share some important concept about the way to explore communication concept for inclusive and engaging appreciation of dissonant heritage. Indeed, Sandra is not just an Urbact expert, she is a background as a scientist communication. Yes, and she follows several projects on this matter, so she will support us in the way to communicate about dissonant heritage as well as to include the diversity and the gender approach in our project. Thank you so much. This is the last. This is also the last presentation of this session, and then we will have the break.
Okay, bear with me. Okay, I know it's hard. Okay, so I'm here today. I'm not an architect. I'm not an art historian. I'm not an expert on dissonant heritage. What the hell am I doing here? I don't know. Well, let's try to find together, okay? I will just, before the pause, then maybe we can discuss a little bit some of the concepts, some of the inputs that I want to give you some food for thought. Some of the things we have seen already in the previous presentation. I just want to touch and just, let's say, generalize some of the things that we have seen, especially from Professor Friedrich, he's here, but also from the other presentation I have touched a little bit about the topic that I will shortly describe it. And really, before the break, since we all need some fresh air and so on, I will just give you, to elicit some feedback from you. So it's about uncomfortable narratives, so it's about the way that we tell the story, okay, starting from history, but we have seen that it's history, but it's also stories. I will show you in this first part just some pictures just to introduce communication, okay, in very general terms. I want to start, before I will explain these pictures and I will give you some inputs. I want to start from the last video that we saw, okay? What do you remember of those images? Anyone? The short video that we saw about the rebuilding after, you know, like the propaganda, what do you remember? Smiles on faces, yes? Young men. What about women? Lots of bricks. Were there any women? What were they doing? So it was a gymnast, okay, so a very important role during, you know, it's, and then what else? Where else did you see women, or actually girls? You remember the march? They were dressed like in traditional dress, dancing, okay. That was the representative, but in traditional, very traditional, so. That is to tell you about representation. So the few pictures that I'm going to show you here are about representation versus appropriation. What does it mean? It means to tell a story from different perspectives. When we represent someone, it's an issue of power. I'm a cultural anthropologist and a sociologist, by the way. That's why I'm here, I think. I'm not sure. But anyway, representation follows the power structure, okay? Whoever is in power represents the world as they see it, you know? We've seen it a lot. And it has to do, well, I'll show you a lot of semiotics. I think Professor Friedrich showed a lot of semiotics, how symbols, architecture are symbolic of our world view, okay? So what I'm showing here is representation from, let's say, who is in power. Here, this is something like the guide of the good wife, okay? This is from the Spanish era of the Francisco Franco, and that is a cookie jar. Okay, cookie jar that was very, very popular in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. What does it remind you, that cookie jar?
Blow with the wind.
Gone with the wind, okay? That's Mummy, okay? And that's the representation of the female Black American or African American, okay? Who couldn't speak very well English, even if she was born there. She didn't speak good English. She was very happy to be in the kitchen. She was very nice with white people who were very nice to her as well.
And
So
she was a slave.
she was a slave. Okay, but she was very happy to be a slave. This is another form of representation. These are representation of Roma people, as we would call them, the gypsies, okay? Carmen, okay, Carmen is the typical, the woman, she was a Roma or gypsy, okay? And this is a famous painting, okay? What does it show? The stereotypes of the enticing woman, who's always, okay, seducing someone, and the poor girl, okay? This is very important to set the standard of how we see minorities. And you see it everywhere. Do you know what these pictures are? They exist, but you probably have never seen them. So the first one up there, it's a couple that was from late 18th century. That's a couple, okay? So at the time, there were, like, they weren't called LGBTQ+, okay? They were called something else, but this is a couple. This is in the United States. This is in Germany. Do you know what this is? This is the Institute of the first trans people, okay? Transgender people. So if you see, you don't see it much, but these are transgender people. They existed. But history does not remember. You know, if you don't see them, they don't exist. This is very interesting. This is also from Spain. And these are two representations. This is the official representation of women, okay, during the Francisco Franco regime. So you see this is a representation from the power. This is a self-representation. This is the group of feminists, okay. What do you see the difference there? What's the main difference? Yes, they have books and they have the cooking, you know. What else in terms of outfit? Dresses, they're all dressed like the angels of the house. Okay, they have a sort of uniform. Do you see their hairdo? Like very, okay. On the other hand, they're all dressed differently. They have books. They have, look at the faces. Okay, very different faces. Okay, so this is representation. That is self-representation, okay? These two things lived in the same time, okay? But officially, these are women. Those are the feminists, radicalists that were sent to prison. Very quickly here again, representation of the Italian woman, okay? And that is the representation of the Polish family. Okay, that was during, I think, the 50s or early 50s, okay? And this, of course, is during fascist time. Here, what is self-representation? These are difficult to say if I don't tell you the context. But again, here is partisan women, okay? During World War II. And what is important about this picture? Guns, but also the men are in the back, okay? The women are in the front. And of course, if you remember the pictures before, or the picture of women during fascist time, this is very different. So this is self-representation. What do you see here? Only men dancing. This is an interesting picture because it was taken on an island during fascist time. Homosexuals were sent, so not all of them were sent in different institutions, and some of them were exiled in this island, on this island. So this was a picture taken on this island where homosexuals were sent, okay? And that's how they had their life in exile. But there are pictures. This thing existed. If we didn't have pictures, it didn't exist. I think that's the last one, okay? We've seen it in architecture, we've seen it in art, we've seen it now in commerce, popular culture. This was a very popular toothpaste brand. It was called Darky. You see the picture, how the black man, the African-American man is depicted with the crazy eyes, but of course the white smile was called Darky. And then there's been, of course, a lot of, let's say, protests about this. And not only this, but this definitely. So it changed from Darky to Darly, and you see it has changed. So you see that also marketing strategies change when people start saying, okay, this maybe is not what it should be, or this representation is not what it should be. That one is a famous one. She was the photographer of Hitler, Leni Riefenstahl, okay? If you remember, during the Olympic Games, she's the one who did that. In her last part of her life, she became fascinated with Africa, okay? And she took a lot of pictures in Africa. But what do you see there in that picture? Yes?
Of course, it's a fascination of Leni Riefenstahl by as she perceived the perfection of human body.
That's the aesthetics. But culturally, you see she well dressed with a photograph, and he's naked. So the idea of Africa is a very, let's say, basic culture, okay? So it's the idea of the old Africa where people are naked, beautiful, but naked, okay? So a culture that is very, let's say, far back behind. So these are all the things that are shown in the picture. This one, and it is the last one, because I think it's time. This is a murales, okay, a graffiti made by a Roma artist, and this is about reappropriation, okay? This is a painting, and you see some very popular figures like Elvis Presley, Charlie Chaplin, because both Elvis Presley and Charlie Chaplin had Roma blood, okay? If you remember what we saw in the beginning, you know, Carmen and the girl, and now you see this is self-representation. This is how Roma people, this is one, okay, choose to represent themselves. So we're not only, you know, the charming lady, the palm reader, or the kids asking for money, but we're also this, okay? So this is the main idea about talking about, when we talk about different perspective and different stories related to dissonant heritage, but also what we consider non-dissonant, things that we need to keep in mind. I will stop here. I think we all need a pause, and I will take it back after the break, okay? Yes.
Great, thanks Sandra for that. With this presentation, we will finish officially the masterclass. We will have the break, a coffee break of about 15 minutes maximum. Then we will go back here for the interactive session, but just for partners. So we will finish the live session. And I will give the floor to Iga, just to share some logistic information for the launch, really important. Thank you so much.
Okay, quick. Nie potrzebuję.